Hi guys, welcome to a slightly delayed episode 70 of my Warhammer Conquest review series. I say slightly delayed because it was New Year's Day yesterday and New Year's Eve, obviously the day before that, and I'm assuming that's what delayed me getting hold of Conquest, because it wasn't available at my local newsagents until this morning, but it has arrived. Saying a better late than never. So let's get into the review. Apologies, I'm very twitchy today. I've had a really weirdly stressful day. Nothing particularly stressful's happened, just one of those days. Right. The content is Cadian Flesh Tone and White Scar. I think we were supposed to have Ogrim Flesh Tone or something like that. Was it Camo Shade? Whatever, it doesn't line up with the original predictions. From what I understand, they thought paints were going to run out at different levels to, in different rates, and so they moved the paints around to make sure people would still have all the paints they needed. So these are 2 layer paints, which come in at $2.75 each. That's $5.50 in total. So you're getting $5.50's worth of paint with the magazine. The magazine itself is worth £8. So you're paying about $2.40. Let me get that out. You're paying about $2.49 in the difference there. So this is another one that's costing you a little bit more than the content, not massively more. And you are only paying $2.49 for what is a reasonable magazine with some reasonable content in it. You know, I certainly, I've never been entirely sure about the the $7.99 price, but certainly £2.50 is not a bad price for that magazine and all the stuff that comes in it. Looking at it, it's $20 in Australia and $20 in New Zealand. I know those guys pay a premium for a lot of stuff, so I have no idea if that works that value to money. If you're a New Zealand or an Australian viewer, maybe comment and let me know. Oh, stressy about it. Right, as always, we've got our intro page signed by Ian, our spiritual liege. Then we've got Holy Terror. As you can see, Holy Terror doesn't resemble Earth much, compared to what we're used to. As a matter of fact, you can kind of see, if you look crisscross lines, that's because almost the entire surface of Earth is covered in buildings at this point. They have hydroponics and a lot of other things there which enable Earth to produce food for itself, but from what I understand, it does completely require support from other planets to keep going. It is effectively the biggest hive world in the Imperium. What was I say? The birthplace of mankind and the final resting place of the Emperor. Terra is the most important and heavily defended world in the entire Imperium. Holy Terror may be a polluted shadow of its past glory, but many Imperial citizens would gladly give their lives just to stand upon its surface. Then it goes on to explain about the Imperial Palace, the Scholastica Psychana, the Hall of the Astronomicon, where 10,000 Psychers power the beam of the Astronomicon. It says 10,000 Psychers power it. What it actually means is that every day 10,000 Psychers are fed to it and they die and are consumed. It's one of the argument that the Emperor has had 10,000 Psychers fed to him every day for 10,000 years, and he's absorbing them whilst basically being able to feel all the pain and suffering they go through. So even if he were to wake up, who knows how sane or insane or powerful or what he would be. He requires that just just to keep going, but billions upon billions, I'd imagine, at this point, psychers having been fed to him, have got to have, you kind of think that's got to have increased his power. But you also kind of think he's got to be batshit crazy, even if he was sane to begin with. So that's interesting. It goes about the orbital defense systems, the halls of judgment, the ecclesiastical palace, and all the various things that is made up on Terra. Life on Terra. Despite its status as the seat of the Imperium's power, Terra is not immune from the problems that afflict the galaxy. The High Lords and their noble kin are fortunate to live in comfortable quarters atop towering networks of highs that cover the city. Miles below, in the grime and dust of the lives, most human life is short and filled with pain and misery. Isn't that nice? Agents of the Adeptus Arbitus and the Inquisition are everywhere, ready to pounce on the slightest hint of disloyalty. Then it goes on about the Emperor's Palace. The Imperial Palace spans the entire Himalayan mountain range. Once it was a shining example of the Emperor's craft, a beautiful utopia in the sky. During the siege of Terra, large parts of the Imperial Palace were destroyed. Whilst it has grown in size since, once more clear mountain skies have been replaced by thick smog and clouds of pollutants. The walls of the palace have become ever more dark and gothic. The Adeptus Custodes still patrolling the palace, manning its impressive defences. So that's pretty cool. And then it goes on to describe the palace itself and give a map there. That's not me making the howling noise, that's my doggy down here. Yeah, which will probably be heresy under pain of death to possess that map if you're actually in the 40k thing, 40k universe. It then goes on for the hierarchy of the Imperium, with the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, which are basically the navigators, the Navis Nobility. So the Adeptus Astra Telepathica identifies classified as recruits psychers. The Navis Nobilitae, also known as Navigator Houses, they make up the Terran-based organisations that all navigators come from. One of the few types of mutants that are tolerated within the Imperium. Navigators have a third eye, which can see into the warp and follow the light of the Astronomicon. This mutation allows them to steer the ship through the warp. Then you've got the Adeptus Astronomicon. Adeptus Astronomica trains psychers to provide the raw psychic power required to fuel the Astronomicon. The psychic homing beam that enables navigators to steer their ships through the warp. This task requires a choir of 10,000 psychers working together at all times. Unfortunately, the task destroys the psychers incredibly quickly. Their life force is draining to power the beam. Fortunately, there are always more where that came from. Yeah, like I say, it doesn't say specifically there, but all the stuff that I've read says it's not just 10,000 psychers, it's 10,000 psychers daily. Then it covers the rogue traders, independent operators licensed and equipped to explore the galaxy, planetary governors, which are self-explanatory, the Adeptus Arbitus, or Arbiters, which are basically Judge Dredd, and the Officio Assassinorum, which you're not allowed to know about because then Collectus Assassin comes around and kills you whilst looking at your mum. Or am I thinking Calidus? Either way, you'd be dead. The Officio Assassinorum is made up of 4 main assassin houses. Your long-range one, your animalistic tear unit part one that disguises itself as others, and an anti-psycho one. However, there are, which is like the Vindicare, the Klexus, the Calidus, and the other one. However, it is worth noting that there are many sub-classifications of assassins. Amongst these, 30. And a lot of random and unique types of assassin that are different to these. You know, if you can think of it, then so can the Officio Assassinorum, and they've probably developed a strategy or tactic to do it. Next, we're moving on to Space Marine Assault Squad. Again, this is another squad that you're not going to encounter in the freebies from this magazine, because this is an original Marine type squad. Assault squads use the little cross symbol and have for decades. Assault squads were created to serve as the fast-moving close support units. Using their jump packs, they blaze across the battlefield, charging into the foe with little regard for their own personal safety, and countless enemies have been broken by the bone-crunching arrival of chainsaw-wielding assault squads. It's worth noting that not all assault squads use backpacks. Some, like the Space War Blood Claws, form large packs without backpacks, using their numbers. Others mount bikes. The Blood Claws from Space Wars can, have a variant called Swift Claws, who use bikes, or Sky Claws, who use jump packs. And there are a lot of other variants amongst the other factions. There we go. The Codex Astartes states that assault squads should be part of an attack's first wave to strike hard and fast at any weak points in the enemy formation. Enemy infantry are shredded by chainsaws and bolt pistols, and their tanks are disabled by crack grenades if they're using weak tanks. It goes on to give a lot more information on the assault squads, but it's all fairly cool and fairly nifty. And I would check it out for yourselves if I were you. Here we've got some more indicators of the assault squads. You've got the jetpacks they use. You've got a guy with a massive great chainsword, which I believe is called an eviscerator. Yep, a Dark Angel Assault Marine wields his eviscerator, which is basically just a bigger, heavier chainsaw that does more damage. You've got the Sons of Sanguinius. Whilst the mutation that created Sanguinius wings has not been repeated in his sons, all Blood Angels have a natural talent for aerial combat. So that's pretty cool as well. Plus they have a lot of weird angelic jump packs, which make them look really awesome. Then we're moving to Centurion Assault Squad. Again, these guys are manned by standard Marines and not Primaris. So again, you won't be seeing these guys. And if you want to play these guys, you'll have to include standard Marines in there. So, they're basically a Space Marine in power armor. They're big, they're thick, and they're devastating. And they're not just designed to assault people, as you can see by the power fists, but also, as you can see by the mining equipment, they're designed to assault vehicles and even buildings. So if you've ever watched Monty Python's The Holy Grail, where they run up and hit buildings with the swords, that's what these guys do. Only when these guys hit buildings, the buildings fall down. Centurion Assault Squads are Space Marines clad in lumbering exoskeletal Centurion warsuits loaded with devastating close combat weapons, as well as protected from enemy fire that can even direct a hit from... so that even a direct hit from enemy artillery does little more than stagger them. It goes on to describe the Centurions here. They're big, they're bad. What it doesn't say about the Centurions, which I shall have a look and see if it says on the next page. Nope, it still doesn't say it. One of the faults with, or drawbacks of the Centurion warsuits are that their machine spirits are insane. They are like very violent, very aggressive, and want to go in and smash things to the point where it can override or even drive mad the Space Marine operating it. In fact, it takes a very strong Space Marine to use one. Some Space Marines just spend all their time in the warsuit, or a lot more time than they should, because they kind of merge or get influenced by the machine spirit, which is a pretty cool thing. So if you think it looks a bit nuts, that's because it is. If you look at the war suit, you can see in the legs, you've got the Space Marine's legs, but the arms obviously don't go in the arms because they wouldn't be able to bend. The arms go crossed over like this, and the Space Marines actually control the war suit primarily through connections wired into their own heads. It goes on to tell you about the integrated weapons. Centurions have hurricane bolters or Centurion assault launchers built into their war suit, which are these bits here, which are nifty. If you're not sure what hurricane bolter is, it's the same rack of bolters that you find on a Crusader Land Raider, which is the close combat one. So if it works the same, basically you've got 1, 2, 3 sets of twin-linked bolters there, which is nifty. And it goes on the omniscope. Centurion sergeants equipped with an omniscope. This device enhances the unit's targeting system, allowing them to pick out enemies that are avoiding. I'll try that again. Sorry guys, a little bit tired. I had a full day of work and I'm knackered. Allowing them to pick out enemies that are hiding or have taken cover. He goes on to it's got a little story there about Siegebreaker explaining how the Centurions break things. Oh, that's nice. We've got another chronological history here, or timeline almost. This one discussing the space wars going from the wrath of Magnus. In the wake of the mayhem created by the Changeling, 9 silver towers of Zench appeared above Fenris. I'm totally reading that there. I won't spoil the story. It goes through the fall of Cadia, and it even goes down to the Great Portent. On Fenris wars and in war zones across the Sea of Stars, Rune priests receive strange visions and dreams. Time and time again, their casting bones point to the same future at the return of the 13th Company. The emergence of Magnus Thread and the awakening of Guilliman. Basically, they knew what was happening. That makes no sense. They've got the gift of the Primarch, which is about the awakening of Guilliman. Oh, they're the last verses of the saga that will culminate in the Wolf Time. This foretold the return of Leman Russ. So there we have at least one official thing from GW that says Leman Russ is coming back at some point. Nothing telling us when, but the sooner the Wolffather returns, the better it'll be for all of us. Here we go. Next, we're moving on to edge highlighting, which is another nifty way of doing things. They're using white scar here to edge highlight the white bits of previous models you've done. So go and dig them out. Yep, go through several models, and then they're using the Cadian flesh tone to highlight several of these Zinch models just to bring some pop to them. So that's pretty nifty. Yeah, we got there and there. Battleforged armies. Now it's in this bit they're going through what a Battleforged army is and how you build it. A Battleforged army is an army built with specific restrictions, usually in a way that they all come from the same codex or the same force, using the same keywords. Most attachments have certain restrictions that limit the type of unit that can be added to them. Usually these restrictions are related to the faction the unit belongs to, but some detachments may have further limitations. You must read the restrictions for each attachment before adding units. Until now, you've given you 3 command points for every mission. From now on, you can only begin the game with these 3 command points if you choose the Battleforged army. So basically, they've been letting you have 3 command points even when your armies aren't Battleforged. But now, in order to get these command points, you need to have a Battleforged army. From what I understand, and I haven't played too much, you can still get command points from non-Battle-Forged armies, only you get a lot less of them. I could be wrong about that. Maybe command points are an important thing. Command benefits. This selection lists any bonuses that you can apply if you include detachments in your army. Usually this will increase the number of command points your army has available to spend on stratagems. Some detachments will have more complicated benefits. Basically, we'll say all armies in the galaxy, from the well-drilled Astromil time to the crazed warbands of the Orc, are structured forces. Here we explain how you can organise your units and detachments into groups that fight together and gain bonuses to do so. Many missions in 40k require you to use Battle-Forged armies. This means you must use units that share a faction and organise them into detachments. It is worth noting that some units can be Battle-Forged in different codexes. For example, Gene Stealers, Pure Strain Gene Stealers appear in both the Gene Stealer Cult Codex and the Tyranid Codex, and include, if you include them to either army, they still remain battle forged in either army. I believe some of the Astra Militarum and the Tempest of Science also share units that can appear in either army, on either force, and still remain battle forged. However, they contain units that can be moved from one force to the other, and the force still remain battle forged. However, the armies themselves are different armies, so you couldn't take a Gene Stealer Neophyte Cultist and put it in a Tyranid army without making that Tyranid army no longer battle forged. But you could do it to a Gene Stealer Pure Strain. You can move it from your Tyranid army, start using it from your Cultist army, and start using it in your Tyranid army without any problems, because it exists in both army books and in both factions. So that's worth noting. Every unit has factions that are part of it, but not all. Every faction has units that are part of it. But some units appear in multiple factions, and you'll find out what appears in your faction, and maybe what even you can transfer over in the various codexes. Another example is Chaos Space Marines can include Chaos Demons in their army to a certain extent, and Chaos Demons can include Chaos Space Marines in their armies. Chaos Demons can include Chaos Demons in their armies, obviously, whilst both armies still remain battle-forged, because the Chaos Space Marine Codex has demons in it, and the Chaos Demon Codex obviously has demons in it. So that is worth considering. It then goes on to explain about factions. All units in Warhammer 40k belong to one or more of the many factions of the galaxies. A unit's faction is important when building a Battle-Forged army, because most attachments require all units included in it to be of the same faction. The faction the unit belongs to are listed in the keyword section of its datasheet. If a datasheet requires that all units must be from the same faction, all units in the attachment must share one of these keywords. All your models have the Ultramarines or Death Guard keywords, so creating an attachment for your forces should be easy. It's worth noting that under normal circumstances, the word Ultramarines is usually replaced by the word chapter in brackets, and that means you can use them for whatever chapter you want. Some things are specific to Ultramarines and Ultramarine successors. Some things are specific to Imperial Fists and Imperial Fist successors. But generic Space Marines will almost always have chapter as a keyword, and you insert the word, you replace that with the word Ultramarines if you're using an Ultramarine army, Imperial Fists if you're using an Imperial Fist army, White Scars if you're using a White Scar army, and so on and so forth. Think about it. Sorry, just checking. There's a lovely picture of White Scars on the front, but that's just because you have the White Scar paint. There's nothing about White Scars in the in the magazine. Sorry, just confused me with saying. So that's worth knowing about. It is worth knowing you can build non-battle forged armies. You do lose a lot of the bonuses like command points and so on and so forth, but you do gain advantages that you can pick stuff from multiple armies and have it work. However, you may find that some tournaments insist on battle forged armies just because it's easier to maintain balance when you're not dealing with hundreds of armies. That being said, having an Imperial Guard army fight alongside a Gene Stealer Cult army makes thematic sense, so there's no reason you can't do it. Having a Chaos Space Marine army fight along a Chaos Demons army, again, makes thematic sense because the Demons army may have access to things you want and the Chaos Space Marine army may have access to things you want exclusively, and you won't want to bring them both to the field. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Eldar making an alliance with Orcs or just turning up to assist Orcs, because the Orc victory works for the benefit of the Eldar sort of overall plan. You know, Frank, there's nothing wrong with including a unit of Space Marines in with your Necrons because they want to destroy, you know, a Chaos thing, and they're there on a separate mission. You know, if you can make thematic sense out of it, go ahead, have fun, but you will lose things because it doesn't make sense in terms of your codex, not because it doesn't make sense in terms of thematicness. I'm pretty sure in this edition anyone can fight with pretty much anyone. I think they've left it a lot more free and easy. But if you want some sort of guidelines as to who makes sense with who, if you go back and look at some of the previous editions, they've got bits where yeah, they've got a grid which cross-references who would ally with who easily, who would ally with who only under extreme circumstances, and guys that would never ally with other guys, you know, except if threat, you know, under threat of death, and then guys that would never ally. Yeah, so Tyranids would never ally with anybody except Gene Stealer Cults because everybody else is just food. You know, the Necrons might ally with the humans if it makes sense to them, but they probably would never ally with Chaos because they're like the antithesis of Chaos. They're purely material and Chaos is very spiritual. You know, so there's loads of sort of rough guides as to what is likely and what's unlikely in previous editions. I'm pretty sure it's fairly free and easy in this edition. I really need to play more of this fucking edition. I haven't got to play in ages, so I've been busy. And by ages, I mean literally, I haven't played all this year and only once last year. So I really need to get back into gaming. At the moment, this is one of the things I'm using to keep me in gaming. But the general rule is, if you enjoy it and your opponent's okay with it, you can do it. But battle forged armies are a bit more in line with the keeping of the game and in line with the story basis of the game. So, you know, that's why they're encouraged and you get you get rules for doing it. In addition to that, as I say, because you're not using hundreds or dozens of different items and you're not mixing and matching between two or more factions, it's often easier to maintain something akin to a balance between with Battleforged forces, so there are advantages that way. It's impossible to maintain an absolute balance, and some armies will just be innately better than other armies. And you know, if you do find that the army you're playing is better than your mate's army, it is worth working with your mate to try and redress that balance. It could just be that your mate's not as good a player, or it could be that his army gives different advantages. A friend of mine used to play Dark Angels in 6th and 7th ed, and we found out that Dark Angels in 7th ed versus my Space Wolves were at a significant disadvantage for not much of a points difference. So we altered some of the rules and made them work. For example, Dark Angels wouldn't run away under any circumstances. The downside to that was they couldn't run away. The advantage my Space Wolves got was if you charged them, they charged you back. And the difference in the points cost was, I think, like half a point at most, or it was the same. But Dark Angels couldn't retreat, even if they couldn't hurt guys, which did lead me into several situations where I threw in, for example, a Dreadnought against some Terminators who were only armed with power swords, and that locked up a unit of 10 elite Terminators for an entire game. Or the Dreadnought just gradually crunched its way through them because they couldn't hurt the Dreadnought, and the Dreadnought couldn't hurt, but the Dreadnought could hurt them. And under their rules, they couldn't run away from the Dreadnought, despite the fact they were massively overpowered. And in second ed, there was a rule which said if you have no chance of winning, you can withdraw. You can roll for leadership, and you can withdraw your troops to try and save them. But Dark Angels, because of their rules, couldn't do that, which created some sucky situations. So we just got rid of that rule because it didn't make sense. And if you've got similar situations, if you're finding stuff doesn't make sense, or just against your army, it doesn't work because your army just beats everything that his army does, then work it out between yourselves and balance it out. It's important to have fun. If the guy you're playing is not having fun, then there's no point. There's an old saying, the most important guy in the game is the guy on the other side of the table. Because if you don't keep him happy, yeah, you might win, but then he won't come back. Anyway, it goes on through creating detachments, how to create detachments, where they fit in the battlefield roles and the like. And how you've got limited detachments to weak Battleforge. For example, a patrol detachment can have 1 to 2 HQ choices, 3 troop units, 2 elite units, 2 fast attack units, 2 heavy support and 2 flyers. And it may include 1 dedicated transport for each unit chosen, meaning that, yes, your HQ unit, even though it's a Wolf Lord, can be one guy with his own Land Raider if you want. So that's all cool. And that gives you an idea how the armies work in a fairly well balanced way. And then again, that's why it's kind of limited like that, to having certain things from a certain set. There are advantages to it. It works quite well, and it balances your army out. However, again, there's nothing stopping you ignoring the Warforged rules and the Battleforged rules and just going, okay, I want nothing but Space Marines on bikes. Yeah, and there are certain armies that also allow you to do that, and that works with. But for example, Dark Angels get Raven Wing, and the White Scars are the White Scars, so they get a ton of bikes. Dark Angels can take a pure Terminator pure Terminator army, either Death Wing or Remote Wing. But even then, there are limitations as to what you can take and what you can do. So it's worth sort of looking at that, looking how it works, looking what you can do, and deciding if a Battleforged army actually works for what you want to do. However, as I say, there are massive advantages to it, and there's a lot of fun to actually be had with the stratagems and the extra stuff. Next, we've got the Battle of Omnus. You got a nice story briefing there. Mission briefing, pitched battle. Then we're moving on. Here we've got a Battleforged roster. They've given you a full Battlefield roster there for the Ultramarines, and a full Battleforged roster there for the Death Guard. So they've gone back to telling you what troops to use here, which is fine. And in my opinion, can make the missions a little more fun. But yeah, just to help you, that's just there to help you work in what Battleforged is and to working in Battleforged units. And here we've got All Out War with your strategic zones and your armies. Both their players will use the pre-created detachment print on the mission. Death Guard players can deploy first. They can deploy no more than 3 units in each of their deployment zones. So you've got 2 deployment zones of Death Guard. Space Marine moves onto the board at the start of their movement phase. Space Marine player has the first turn, which makes sense. If the Death Guard player had the first turn, either the battle would be over because there'd be no Space Marine players in there. or they'd all just inexorably march one pace forward, you might as well give them a deployment zone that's further forward. Oh look, they have. Victory conditions. Space Marines gain 1 VP for every unit that ends the game in the enemy's first deployment zone, and 2 for every unit that ends in the second deployment zone. Death Guard gain 1 victory point for every unit eliminated, and the game lasts 5 rounds. So, yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool, pretty reasonable battle. The Space Marines have to move fast. The Death Guard have to keep on a slow, grinding assault and wipe out as many of their enemies as possible. That's literally what both those units are, both those factions are made to do. So that looks very fun. We've got the standard trying to sell you bits there, which are all very good. It tells you to go and check out your local store, check out your local clubs, and look online for fun stuff. Right, next week we have the Crane. It's worth noting I've actually gone and looked through what the predicted things were. Issue 71 was supposed to have some no, I've forgotten the word. It was supposed to have all the little bits and pieces like the surgical table and that. The objectives, it was supposed to have the battlefield objectives according to the big predicted thing. Instead, it's got the Mechanicus Crane, but the Mechanicus Crane wasn't one of the other ones, so it looks like I just swapped stuff around. And 72 is sticking what it's supposed to be, which is 2 Chaos Spawn. So that's pretty cool. So issue 72 will involve a prize, because I don't need those Chaos Spawn. I don't have an army they do anything for. So I will put those up to be won. And it's worth noting that according to the predictions, and this is mostly for the Primaris players out there, issue 75 is going to be the issue where the repulsor tanks start, and that's going to run for 4 issues. According to the predictions, 75, 76, 77 and 78 are going to have bits of the tank there, so you're paying about £31 and a bit for the tanks, which in $7.99 portions, which is A, an easy way to pay for it, and B, cheaper. So it might be worth considering and putting some money aside so that you can order a couple of those issues from your newsagents, because one of the biggest basic expenditures in a Primaris army is their transports. It's one of the things you kind of do need, and they're £50 a pop, which does make them quite expensive. So if you can drop them down to £30 or £31 to £32, that's saving you a lot of money. So if you can get a couple of those issues, it is worth considering it. I mentioned this a couple of issues ahead just so you guys can think about it and think whether or not you want to do it. After that, there's 2 more issues to take us to 80, and all the predictions have us at just 80 issues for this. So we could be looking at the last 10 episodes and 10 issues, counting down from now. Okay, last but not least, this went up to win on my previous video. I rolled the dice and the winner is Hugh Tyndall, or Tyndall. I think you might have won before, I'm not sure. But as always, send your address to wargamerdaduk@gmail.com and I will send this out to you. And as I always say, if you've won before and you've sent me your address before, you'll still need to send it again, because I delete the addresses once I've used them. There's no reason for me to have them on my email account. And if my email account were to get hacked, people would have your personal addresses and I'm not going to be responsible for that. So yeah, literally, you send them to me, I write them down and I delete them pretty much as soon as I can. To the guys that won the previous competitions, I haven't been sending stuff out in the run-up to Christmas. A, because I've been mega busy because I've got 3 kids and it's Christmas. And B, because frankly at Christmas time, mail is less reliable and I didn't want stuff to get lost. Now that's all over, I'm going to be putting your prizes in the post, and they should hopefully be arriving with you soon. It was just a case of literally, as I say, I was mega busy and didn't have the time to get down to post offices. And I was mildly concerned that if I posted something too close to Christmas, it would go walkabout. Tons of stuff gets lost over Christmas. That's just because the standard mail staff are overworked, and a lot of the other mail staff are new guys who aren't yet that skilled at the job because they've only just started, which is fair enough. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that. Sorry for the delay. Sorry for the vast amounts of Tourette's. Really struggling at the moment. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.